protrude ever so slightly. Hello, little boy. Are you going to come and be brave and big and scary? Or are you just munching there? Yes, you're very scary. Again, this little one's secreting from his temporal glands, but the rest of the herd is perfectly relaxed. Now he's reaching the teenage years, and there comes a little one at the back. You better hurry to catch up. Hasn't got to the point of getting her tusks yet. I'm quite surprised by that, actually. She looks large enough. Might be a little tuskless elephant. There's a couple of tuskless herds wandering around. Sorry, it's a little boy. It's a little male calf. No sign of the tusks coming through. They usually are quite clearly visible at about 3 years of age. And the whole herd wandering across onto Buffelshoek in search of more water, I imagine. There's something so peaceful about a view like this. A whole elephant herd completely ignoring us, apart from the one little boy, and just going about their afternoon business. You can just imagine how hot it must be being a 1 ton or 1 to up to 6 ton elephant. How discomforting that would be without those magnificent air conditioning units that are their flapping ears, built to cool down a gargantuan creature. And of course, the larger the volume, the smaller the surface area to volume ratio, and the harder it is for them to either gain heat or lose heat. So for elephants, they need to have a constant cooling mechanism. We've had a wonderful elephant afternoon. James with those bulls at Arathusa Dam, and us with the breeding herd. And we've spoken before about the elephants being a bit more stressed out, a little bit more harassed by the large males in the area. And if Gerard was wondering, how often do we see male elephants fighting? It depends how seriously you mean. If you mean a serious conflict, and that does occasionally occur, particularly between two large bulls when they can't agree on who has access to the female, that's a fairly unusual situation. Almost inevitably, the younger males will give way to the older, more sizable male elephants. But if you happen to have, for example, one in must that refuses to back down, or two elephants of equal size, then you do get really serious fights that can actually end in death for one or both of the individuals concerned. Gerard, I haven't seen any while I've been here. I've only ever seen one serious clash between elephant bulls in my lifetime, and I think I was very fortunate to see it. Although perhaps I've just been working in the wrong areas. I think it's probably more common in areas such as Botswana, and probably further into the more open areas of the Kruger, where you get a lot of the large elephant bulls. You might have a better chance of seeing it. What is very common to see is a play fight between elephant males. Play fighting where they bash their tusks and their heads together, but without any real intention. It's basically just a little bit of a rumble to keep each other entertained and to practice for when they might need to use those skills. Just like a sparring competition. Our elephants are moving on to Buffelshoek, and James has got an interesting water bird to show you while I head across to Sydney's dam.
Well, yes, there is an interesting water bird, and I'll leave you to guess what is sitting in amongst the interesting water bird. That water bird is called a hammerkop, which means hammerhead, and it's called that way, Andrew, because its head looks like a hammer. That's why it's called a hammerhead. Yeah, you can see that. And what it's doing is very patiently waiting for a frog. or a fish to go by, but I think a frog probably, sitting dead still, hoping that that little dribble of water, there, got him. What was that? A tiny fish. I didn't see what that was. It was so fast.
If you can slow-mo it.
Yeah. Maybe Final Control can slow-mo it and tell us what that was. Anyway, and amongst the Hammerkop are lots and lots of buffalo bulls. And this is a very peaceful little scene here at a pan called Second Windmill Pan here at Arethusa. And lots of beautiful mud for the buffalo to wallow in. We've just had one rolling about with his legs stiff in the air. He looked again like Jerry doing some yoga. Well, she doesn't do it in the mud really, but you know, it looked like a pretty difficult pose to be striking. So we'll have to ask Jerry what that particular pose is called. And we've also had a number of woodland kingfishers around here. Lovely iridescent blue or halcyon blue shining in the sun that has finally set behind a bank of grey clouds. Mercifully, it is starting to get a bit cooler. Well, these bulls will happily drink this water. They will lie in it, they will go to the loo in it, and show no ill effects whatsoever. Sorry, I've just seen something very odd. Wait 1 second here. And it was the buffalo's tail. I thought it was a crab that was crawling down the back of the buffalo there. But it isn't. It is the buffalo's tail that is cunningly disguised in the shape of a crab. The other animal that was in here is a serrated hinged terrapin. We've seen a few of them kind of just sort of, what would they be described as doing? Not wallowing in the mud, but sort of scraping about in the mud, trying to find bits and pieces to eat, climbing on the buffalo when they can, but they're not really tolerated in the same way that hippo will tolerate them. There's one there. Another one popped its head up for a breathe. Now, of course, the serrated hinged terrapin, much like a turtle, is an air-breathing animal. It cannot breathe under the water. They are reptiles, and therefore they must breathe clean, open air. When they're under the water, they are holding their breath in exactly the same way that you are when you are having a swim under the water. So please remember that. Don't confuse them with amphibians like frogs or salamanders. Is that what I think it is? Last time no, it's not. Is it? It is. It's an old one. That is that's a woodland kingfisher. But in front of the woodland kingfisher, I think, was an old foam nest frog nest. Was it a leaf, Andrew?
No, foam nest frog.
It is. That's an old foam nest frog nest. Now, normally at this time of the year, every piece of puddle and water you've got is covered, or every overhanging branch over every piece of water we have is covered in these foam nests, which contain the grey tree frog and the eggs of the grey tree frog. And when they hatch, they eat away at the foam and then drop into the water. And the foam acts, there's a brilliant one, perfect. So that's an active one. You can see it's still quite moist. And the tadpoles will eat out of that once they hatch, drop into the water, and they're kept very safe from the elements in there and from predators. I think that foam is not particularly nice to predators. But this year, that's the first proper one I've seen. Really lovely sighting here of some buffalo, foam nest frogs, terrapins, hammerkop, woodland kingfisher, and in the background, the sound of the grey hornbill. And one last thing I want to look at once we've looked at that buffalo, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind showing us this chap who's looking at us with a very imperious look on his face. He has obviously had his head covered in mud the whole day, and despite the fact that he's looking at us like a sober judge in a British courtroom, one cannot take him seriously covered in that amount of mud on his face. You can see his ears tell 1,000 stories of many years in the bush running through the thorns, trying to escape lions and fighting within the herd. Gerda, an interesting question. Oh, there's a rubbing post. So in fact, there are quite a few of them around here. All these stumps will have been rubbed smooth by the buffalo and the warthogs and the rhino that come through here and rub themselves, and scratch away the itches and then walk away. And some of them are polished totally smooth. Gerda, you want to know about making eye contact and whether animals are aggressive or not when you make eye contact with them. As far as I know, Gerda, certainly no animal out here has ever become aggressive to me because I've looked at it in the eye, and I've looked at them all in the eye very often. I think that comes from, there are some monkeys behind us. I'm just, yeah, I'm just going to turn slightly, Gerda, while I'm answering your question. And the only animal that I can imagine it maybe perhaps making a difference to would be for example, a wild dog, simply because the only domestic animal that I know of that reacts to eye contact is a dog. I don't know that cats do it, and certainly I rode horses for many years, and no horse I ever rode responded to eye contact. So I think it's probably just about only the domestic canids that do it, perhaps wolves, maybe wild dogs, but certainly not a buffalo. And there are some monkeys. I don't mean in the car, of course, I mean in the tree there. The little baby monkey, see, with his mum, having a suckle. It always amazes me, when I watch wildlife with little ones, especially closely related ones to us like the monkeys, and the lack of fuss shown for offspring is amazing. Human beings, when they have babies these days, especially if they're in cities and in the Western world, they've got to buy thousands of different gedunte, which is a nice Afrikaans word that doesn't have an English equivalent. It just basically means stuff. Thousands of rands and dollars worth of things to keep this child okay, things to go in the car, things to go for a walk, things to go for a run, things to carry its nappies in, different kinds of things to feed it, different attachments to the body, carry it on the front, carry it on the back, carry it on your head. A monkey or an impala, they just don't have that issue. There's a big herd of buffalo coming in here now, a breeding herd coming in. So I think we'll stay right where we are while they come in. And that monkey just, when the baby wants to feed, it feeds. And when the mother wants to move, the baby jumps on the front and off they move. There's no question of taking 45 minutes to pack a nappy bag, get the car seat in the car, pack a bootload of toys before you can move off to possibly have a bite to eat other than in your own kitchen. And I find that in the rural areas out here, it's very much the same. Babies fit in with the parents rather than the other way around. Hello, Rocky Knight. I think I'm hearing your question correctly. We don't have a great deal of signal here with the final control, but you want to know, you think you've never seen this pan before and you want to know where it is. It's on Arethusa, the northwestern corner of Arethusa, or sort of central western Arethusa. Over the back of the pan there where those buffalo are standing is Elephant Plains. So we're right on the western edges of our traversing area. And we do come here, we come past here quite a lot, and sometimes there are buffalo in here and sometimes there aren't. But because the signal can be a bit dodgy in this area, and this is something really fun happening here, we don't normally stop. Very nice. Breeding herd thinking about coming to have a drink here. Now, Gilly in Wisconsin, you have been surprised on the chat because none of you have ever heard crabs mentioned on Drive before. We do get freshwater crabs here, Gilly, and I actually learned that from, of course, one of the great experts in the small things that we find out here, and that was Mark, who used to present for WildEarth. And he found, well, it was through him that I didn't actually work with him, but he found a crab's nest at Djuma. And he showed Scott, and Scott in turn showed me. So you will find freshwater crabs in and around these little pans, but they're very difficult to see. This herd of buffalo is quite nervous of these bulls, I think. And Andrew, just look here quickly. Sorry, there's some rubbing going on. You can see, you can see why these posts have been rubbed so perfectly smooth. That one has very clearly got a deeply injured or deeply itchy undercarriage, and his friend, for the sake of his privacy, is standing between the camera and him. I think that's very kind indeed. He knew precisely that the camera was going to be on him, and so he got in the way of it for his friend. So it's a little herd of buffalo coming in here. It's not a big breeding herd. And the last 4 or 5 breeding herds I've seen have been this big. They've been tiny. Well, other than the big one, about 250 I saw yesterday morning, or 2 mornings ago. I can't remember when it was now. And I wonder if it hasn't because they've been split up by lions that have been chasing them around the place. It might just be because they're focusing on these tiny bodies of water. Hello, Gracie. You've joined us again, and you want to know if that little monkey over there, if I think that monkey would like to sit on my head and drive around the bush. Gracie, I'm very sure that that little monkey would like nothing less than sitting on my head and driving around the bush. They're very scared of people, you know. And I know that you've probably seen a few things on TV where monkeys will sit on people's shoulders or sit on their heads. A wild monkey like that would be very, very scared of me or all people. Right, we were looking at some beautiful European bee-eaters earlier. My favorite bee-eater now with Jamie, the red version.
I know that you were looking at the European bee-eaters with James earlier. Here we have the strikingly coloured carmine bee-eater. A day before Valentine's Day, an early Valentine's gift for you all, I present to you one of the pinkest birds you can find. And I think tomorrow, when Brent and myself are on drive in the morning, for you it will be just before Valentine's Day, for us it will be the start of Valentine's Day. I think I shall challenge him for the first person to be able to find a carmine bee-eater, and that person wins Valentine's Day. Because, as with all days, Valentine's Day must have some degree of competition to it. But there you go, one of our latest arrivals, a late arriving migratory species, much longer, thinner tails than most of the other bee-eaters. And they really are extraordinary looking birds. That you can see where the carmine comes from. That bright pink and red, and even in the setting sun, it highlights it even more. And they come through. Some of them, interestingly, some carmine bee-eaters breed here and some do not, which is quite fascinating to me. They breed in both where they migrate from and down to here. And off he goes in search of insect prey. I'll go forward a little bit. That shape of the tail is so interesting. It's got going to be joined by a friend, I think, and it looks like it might be a European. Let's see who we've got here. Oh, no, wait, we're going back again. Where are we going? Which way are we going? Oh, we're going back to the dead tree. Thank you, bee-eater. And back to the same branch. The joys of live wildlife filming, and particularly live bird filming. There's what looks to be a European bee-eater just below it, but it's unfortunately quite far behind the bushes, so you can't really get a good perspective. I wanted to try and show you the comparison between the two and give you an idea of the scale. But carmine bee-eaters have the most fascinating tails. They've got a sort of a normal length bird tail, and then from the middle of it projects one or two or about 3 long spindly feathers, giving it that long tail tip. It's a really interesting shape, and it's a wonderful way that they've evolved to, I can only guess, at increased maneuverability. I'm attempting to dig through a combination of Brent and myself's. There we go, that's what I was looking for. Attempting to find the bird book so that I can show you a closer picture of what it is I meant by the shape of that tail. Really beautiful bird. Oh wow, look at it in that sun. And like all bee eaters, as their name suggests, and that long curved bill gives away, specialized insect catchers, and it's very common to see them whip a bee or a stinging wasp out of midair and then land on a branch like this one and slam their beak repeatedly and essentially beat away the sting of the insect before they swallow it. One of those bird species that would nest in the holes like the ones we pointed out right at the very start of the drive. Awesome. I just want to show you a quick picture of our carmine bee eater's tail so that you can get a bit of a perspective on what I mean about it. There you go. That incredible tail. You can see what I mean. It's got that normal length to almost a V type approach to it. I'm going to try and move my hand so that I can get more sun on the picture. Oh, I don't think it's going to work. There we go. That works a little bit better. There you go. And then those spindly spine at the back. And not all of the bee eaters have that. Some of them have the very traditional approach to it. So, for example, if we compare it to one of our other bird bee eater species, like the, let's say, for example, the little bee eater has a little forked tail. It's fascinating how they all have different shapes. Really interesting. And we probably get we commonly see, I would say, about 4 or 5 different species here. The most common are the carmine, the white-fronted, which is this individual here, the little bee eater that I just showed you, and then right at the bottom, the European bee eater. So 4 that we would commonly see. But there's so many different bee eater species throughout South Africa, or throughout Africa, I mean, that you could get to see, all with those bright colors, just in different combinations with the different colors. Now, my next plan of attack, since Sydney's dam was completely quiet, is to move on towards the hyena den. Since I'm going on leave tomorrow afternoon, I think it's only fair that I get to spend a little bit more time with one of my favorite predators before they decide to, in case they decide to move the den while I'm away. And just to finish off the topic of conversation and the birds, Matthew, who is 9 years old, would like to know what bird species, or if there are any bird species, that would eat a scorpion. And Matthew, that bee eater is a good example of one that might. Now bear in mind, what on earth has this squirrel got on the back of its... Oh, it's just funny fluff. Looks very strange. I think it's actually a squirrel with a broken tail. Where's it dashed off to? There he's hiding. Grabbed something on his way past us, but its tail was hanging in a very strange way. Sorry, Matthew, I'll be with you in 1 second. Nibbling on whatever particular grass seed he happened to grab. Well done, Brian, for finding him. But back to Matthew, Matthew, 9 years old, who's asked the question about birds that eat scorpions. Bear in mind, Matthew, that some scorpions only grow to about this big. So from my thumb to my forefinger in length, and really skinny, like little twig skinny. So a bee eater like that could happily catch one if it was able to find one under bark, for example, or around the trees. Some of the bigger species of scorpions, the big ones with the large stings, they could well be targeted by even something like a hornbill. Lilac-breasted rollers or purple rollers, European rollers, all of the roller family are also well adapted. They've got those big, thick, strong beaks that they can grab scorpions up with and sort of beat away the sting before the scorpion can sting them. And of course, Matthew's absolutely right. There's got to be a technique to catching scorpions because they can sting and they've got venom. A lot of the birds will grab them by that venomous pin or by the venomous sting in their tail and rip it away from the rest of the body of the scorpion, thus essentially disabling them or disabling the sting, and then continue on to munch them and swallow them down. But we get a whole load of different scorpions belonging to different families. Now, the biggest of those, or the scariest of those, for some people, is the Parabuthus, the Buthidae family. And those are the scorpions, as we've repeated many times before, those are the scorpions that you need to watch out for. If a scorpion has a thick tail and thin pincers, those are the ones you want to watch for. And brilliantly, Brian, is this the one that was at DRC by any chance? How amazing is that? Brian's very kindly handed me a picture of one of the most deadly types of scorpion, a Parabuthus scorpion.
In our bathroom.
And there you go, Brian telling us that it was in your bathroom. Where was it in the bathroom, Brian?
By the shower.
By the shower. So for all of those members of the DRC, which is the camp in which most of the team lives, that is a very scary individual. Now, to give you a bit of a perspective of scale, Brian, how big would you have said that guy was? About the size of my hand? Maybe a little bit smaller?
Yeah, about a little bit smaller.
A little bit smaller than my hand. So this is a sort of a real size picture of this scorpion. You see those thin pincers? Thin pincers. Oh, we keep it alight. So essentially you know that this is not a scorpion that relies upon its pincers for catching its prey. And then that thick, dark, threatening tail with the sting in it. And interestingly, Parabuthus scorpions are also capable of spraying venom. So not only can they sting you and get you with that barb, that pointed barb that you can see there resting across the tail. This is brilliant. Thank you, Brian. This is exactly what we needed to show them. But they can also eject it at a distance. Now, that being said, it's not like a Mozambican spitting cobra that has fantastic accuracy. It will battle to be able to reach your eyes. In fact, it would probably really only spray your knees. But an awesome picture of a scorpion's anatomy, the forelegs, the fused cephalothorax, the head and the thorax fused together, and then those adapted pedipalps that extend up as pincers in front of its head. They're fascinating creatures, scorpions. They really, really are. You can actually even see I think there's a water drop from the shower on the tip of its tail there. That looks like a water drop to me. So, members of the DRC, beware. That is lurking in the bathroom. Now, for human beings, in terms of threat level of that scorpion, it's fairly threatening, and I think that if you are particularly allergic to bee stings or any kind of insect stings, you might struggle a little bit more in your reaction to it. However, for the most part, a healthy adult isn't going to be threatened by it. You will feel horrible. You might end up in hospital, and you feel a little bit like you are dizzy, vomiting, very anxious feeling. So some of that venom is neurotoxic. So your heart starts to palpitate and stress due to the increase of adrenaline and the effect that it's having on your synapses, firing away. That being said, now that I've scared you all half to death and put the terror of Parabuthus scorpions into you, I've never had a serious encounter with a scorpion. I have been stung by them before, not Parabuthus. I have lived many years in the bush, and I've never struggled with them. The chances of encountering them and actually getting stung are next to nothing, as long as you're cautious. Check the shower curtains. Brian is providing a wealth of scorpion knowledge. I'm just going to move into the shade before I show you Brian's next picture of a slightly less harmful scorpion.
This was outside the bathroom.
This was outside the bathroom, says Brian. Ladies in final control, are you enjoying our scorpion demonstration? This is, as you can see, in the sand outside. There you can see a lovely difference. Brian really providing some awesome pictures this afternoon. The ladies in final control are not impressed and may not ever shower again. But we have the very large pincers here and the much reduced tail, but there's still a little bit of venom in this particular individual. I'm not completely wrong. I'm fairly certain this is a Opisthocampus. Oof, that's a tongue twister and a half. Glabrifrons. Glabrifrons. There we go. There we go. That was the mangling of the Latin name of this scorpion. Opisthocampus glabrifrons. Quite a nice, relaxed little scorpion. Doesn't often sting. It's not aggressive. It would still hurt. It would hurt like a bee sting would hurt. You can see how different the coloration is, and that in turn gives you a bit of a clue as to its habitat. But you've got a nice front-on view. You can see the mandibles of the jaw and the forward-facing eyes. Interesting creatures, scorpions. I think they're absolutely fascinating. And we very regularly catch them and remove them. Advice for wary travelers that maybe are feeling a bit nervous after this. First of all, scorpion stings are very unusual. Secondly, check before you grab something. They're nocturnal. Most of the species are nocturnal, so nighttime is when you need to be most concerned. So wear closed shoes, always carry a torch, and just check the crevices where you think they like dark hidden places, except for that Parabuthus in the scorpion that apparently enjoyed the shower curtain. But you never know. Here you go, Brian. I'm going to pass that back to you. And then the other big place where people get stung by scorpions fairly regularly is wood piles. If you go to put a pile of wood on the fire, be aware that that is one of the main habitats of scorpions. They like to live in the cracks of bark, underneath parts of the bark. That is where they like to spend the daytime. So if you reach forward and grab a piece of log to throw on a fire without thinking, first of all, you might burn that poor scorpion alive. I always like to tap my wood on the ground when I collect it to make sure I've chased away any insects or unsuspecting scorpions. But also just be aware of where you put your hands. Carry a torch, carry a headlamp. Oh my goodness, and after all of this, I had completely forgotten about the wonderful tracks that I saw. In fact, I don't even think that I've given you the right answer yet. I've told you what it's not. I haven't told you what it is. Now, the lights got a little bit tricky, but I'm going to tell you that Dylan, Julia, and Safari Dean, let's see if I can find a nice way to position us so that we can get this light patch of dirt on the camera, or a patch of dusty road where the sun is shining. How's that, Brian? Can we zoom in there? Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to grab a stick and I'm going to give you a demonstration. But before I do, well done to Dylan, Julia, and Safari Dean. It was indeed an aardvark. I'm just going to have a look and see if we can draw this out for you a little bit. It's a bit far away. Let's see what I can do. Do you think it's going to show through at this angle, Brian?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Oh, elephant somewhere. So, a little bit of a tracking lesson. This was an aardvark. 3 claws, showing really clearly, nice and thick. And then the scrape mark that I spoke about before was its tail, moving along with its foot and moving over the top of the track. So that was its tail. An animal that I know the tracks of very well, but have yet to manage to see. Safari Dean came close as well with the honey badger guess. Honey badgers have toes that go like this. 1, 2, 3, and then 2 little ones on the side. And then the claw marks, instead of doing that flattened version of what an aardvark looks like, they just tap a distance away from the toes themselves, and then the back pad falls here. This is a giant honey badger. It's the biggest honey badger the world has ever seen, because my artistic talent is perhaps not up to scratch. But the claws just fall about, I would say about an inch away from where the track actually is. So you don't get that flat of the 3 claws. And just to go back to the hippo, our track was about, this is a rough sketch of our track. That was about as big as our track was, with the little front track here. A hippo would be, there you go, the world's best impression of a hippo track anywhere ever seen ever. My artistic skills coming through. That's about as big as a hippo track would be. I think I'm going to have everyone fooled. Next time somebody drives down this road, they're going to take one look at those tracks and go, my goodness, a honey badger and an aardvark and a hippo were walking down the road together. Totally imperceptible. I would never have known it wasn't actually a hippo that made that track. Looks like a child's drawing from this perspective. I don't know, Brian, how you managed to hold back the laughter. Well, they didn't really hire me for my artistic skills as far as I know. And as I leave my wonderful impression of my artistic version of my artistic interpretation of the tracks that animals leave, I'm going to make my way across the hyena den. In the meantime, let's find out what James is up to.
We have turned off the main road onto Uyatela, now rough patch of the road, and we are now heading for Sydney's Dam, hoping of course that we're going to see a great big pack of wild dogs coursing across the plains after a hapless herd of impala. At the moment there is nothing but a drought-stricken land in front of us. We didn't see anything else on Arathusa. We didn't spend too much time there, but it was a very pleasant diversion onto that property for much of the afternoon. It feels like, I know we've only got about 45 minutes left of the drive, but it feels like it's much longer because it's still so bright. There's no kind of dimming in the light, because off to the west there you can see my face is now bathed in a beautiful golden hue. Off to the west there, of course, the light is still undiffused by any clouds. And I can't see anything, Andrew, because I stared straight at the sun.
Silly man, James.
I'm seeing spots. I'm seeing spots, Andrew. Tell me if I go wrong.
Going wrong, James.
Oh dear. Phew. Goodness gracious, that was close. Now, I like this question from Mr. Tuvox. Hello, Mr. Tuvox. Interesting name, that, Mr. Tuvox. You want to know about jackals, the other canid that we get here. The one being the wild dog, the other being the jackal. And do we get them here? Well, we do sometimes. And it's an abiding mystery to me why we don't get more of them. Where I used to work at Ngala, which is only about 50 kilometers north of us here, similar vegetation type, very similar kind of geology of the area, but we used to have a black-backed jackal pair in every single clearing. So you'd come through a clearing like this, and there'd definitely be a black-backed jackal pair or two living in a clearing like this. Here, not at all. Sometimes we get side-striped jackals, which are slightly different. They're much more solitary. They do live in pairs, but they forage on their own, and they look a little bit like a sort of small wolf, if you like. They don't behave like wolves at all. They eat quite a lot of fruit. We do get them every so often, but not often at all. I mean, I think I've seen 3 or 4 here in the last year or so. And often at night. I think it's probably got a lot to do with the fact that they are largely nocturnal animals, especially in the presence of pressure from other predators. And there is quite a lot of pressure from other predators in this area, lots of hyenas around at night, and you probably find that they therefore move around at night rather than in the day, where they're more obvious. Unlike that duiker who thinks he's hiding from me, but I've spotted him. Ah, there you are. Can you see him, Andrew? Yes. You see, he thought he had got me. He thought he'd got one over on me, he did, but he hasn't. His little wet nose. He's a bit worried. He thinks maybe we've spotted him. He's thinking about moving. Oh, just warming up. There we go. Just in case we've seen him, he's leaving. Good. Now, their much smaller relative is the steenbok, and they are found in great abundance around here. In great abundance, you don't see them in big herds like you do in Parla, but there are lots of them. And they will thrive in this sort of situation. They don't mind the drought at all. They're almost completely water independent, believe it or not. And in some areas, they live, parts of Namibia, for example, they won't go and drink anything for probably weeks at a time. They derive all the moisture they need from the food that they eat, highly efficient digestive system, very effective kidneys at filtering out the water so that they don't waste water on urine. They will be absolutely fine. There's a buffalo just ahead of us. You may just see his dark shape moving north into the woodland there. We're not going to stop for him, just because we've seen lots of his friends. And lovely sky, I mean, that's spectacular. Very nice, Andrew. That's very artistic of you. Now we're going up a road called Impala Road, which is on the western fringes of Djuma, and we're about to come out into another clearing. And again, Mr. Tuvox, the clearing that we're going to come out to now, I mean, I was very used to, when I first started guiding, finding always a pair of black-backed jackals in a clearing like this. I don't know if you've ever seen jackal pups, but they're definitely some of the cutest things you can ever hope to see out here. Typical kind of dog pups, very inquisitive, very playful. And not much in the way of wild dog pups this year, yet. So here is the clearing. Beautiful sunset coming as we drive. Kristen in North Carolina, you want to know what the highest animal in the food chain is and would they be threatened by any other animal? It's not so much a food chain as it is a food network, Kristen. I think that's the best way to describe it. So top of the predator hierarchy would be lions. Nothing eats lions except sometimes other lions. Would they be afraid, however, of other animals? Yes, they would. They'd be afraid of elephants, definitely. They'd be afraid of human beings. We would be, I suppose, considered the top of the food chain in that we are the most dominant predator out here. Are we afraid of anything? Yes, definitely. We'll get out of the way of buffalo if we are not suitably protected. Likewise, elephants, and likewise, lions. Would elephants be afraid of anything? No, elephants are not generally afraid of much. They will chase lions and hyenas away, especially if they've got little ones around them. Even wild dogs they will chase away. We don't really know why they bothered to do something like that, but they do it all the time. And they would, I suppose you could call them the top of the food chain. They're the largest, least threatened animals out here. Thank you, Kristen. So nice to have the heat slowly diffusing as the sun sets, but I think we're in for another pretty hot night, and we're in for 2 more very hot days before we get a little bit of cool. Katrina, very nice question. I talked about canids, and you want to know there's a difference between a canine and a canid. No, there isn't. A canid, a canine would be, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. So Canidae is the family that all the dogs come from. They come from the Canidae, and you would therefore call the canids, any member of that family you would call a canid. I suppose you could call it a canine. There probably isn't a difference. I know most recently, remember, we used to talk about hominids, and now we talk about hominids and hominins. And there is a difference there. For example, a hominid, the blanket family is the Hominidae, and that would include all the great apes, including the chimpanzees and gorillas and gibbons and orangutans. I think they're in the same family. And then the hominins would be our very close relatives. So most of the extinct bipedal ancestors that we have, and I think chimpanzees are also possibly connected to that subfamily called the Homininae. But I don't think there's any difference between a canid and a canine. You could certainly use them interchangeably, and I don't think anybody would give you trouble or refuse to serve you a drink at a bar, for example, were you to use the term canine instead of canid. And the only two we get out here, of course, are the jackals and the wild dogs. I was talking about wild dog puppies, and I said we hadn't seen many this year. Well, of course we haven't. It's much too early in the year, and that dovetails quite nicely into Debbie in Vancouver's question about whether they breed every year or not. They do, Debbie. They will normally breed in the winter time. They will probably mate around May, give birth in the middle of July, 70-day gestation period, so very short. We're just going past these impala as we head towards Sydney's dam, and that, of course, is because the vegetation, well, this looks like winter vegetation now. It's excellent hunting time for impala, at least for wild dogs. They love this kind of vegetation because they can course across it. There's no long grass to get in their way. There are few leaves on the trees, and that's why they normally breed in the winter time, as opposed to when most of the herbivores will breed exactly opposite in the middle of the summer. Now, that's not to say that it's impossible for wild dogs to breed at other times of year, and it might be interesting to see whether perhaps, given the state of things at the moment, they don't breed early this year. It'll be very interesting to see. There are some elephants at Sydney's dam. How surprising. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I'm not surprised in the least. And I'm hopefully going to see my friend the crocodile, which nobody believes me about. Everybody's very suspicious that I saw a hippopotamus and not a crocodile. Andrew, what do you think? In fact, don't say. Just keep quiet and film. There is a herd of buffalo moving off. And I'll just stop down here where we can get a good view of the crocodile. There we have 3 elephants and the buffalo left at the waterhole. Lovely. I don't see any hippopotami at this stage. Very nice little scene there. And the elephants will enjoy this water more than they will most of the small pan water, simply because the amount of dung in it is slightly diluted. We've seen some bull elephants having a few wars of late, pushing each other around the place, especially at the water. Young ones being disciplined by older ones. And Donna, you want to know if females ever have fights. I've never seen a serious fight between 2 cows, Donna. I have seen them pushing each other around a little bit, but generally they tend to be much more civilized than the males. So I would say probably not, Donna, no, not too much. Yeah, that bull is just chasing the buffalo. They become very territorial about their water at times. I'm scanning the surface of the water for a floating log. I don't see any hippos at the moment. Right, now, at the beginning of the drive, it was very hot, and I described the scene there, and I asked you to send through 3 words about what you felt and how the sort of scene was making you feel. And we're just going to have a look at the sunset, and while we do that, what I would like you to do is think about 3 more words now, and I'll just describe the scene to you. It's much cooler. Probably dropped about 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. The sun has set. The sky has gone from that washed out kind of pale blue to a much deeper, more gentle blue color, and that lovely sort of pale lemon yellow has touched the sky. So perhaps send through another 3 words describing how this might make you feel. I'm just going to be quiet for another 10 seconds. Let's just listen. Here's some hardy dogs. So in fact, no, you can't have 3 words this time. Send through 1 word, #Safari Live, questions at wildearth.tv, and let's see if the impressions that we had from this early this afternoon in the blazing heat have changed now as the subtlety of the evening comes to the fore. Andrew, can you get here? Oh, nasty little wasp. That was a spider-hunting wasp, and it seemed to have either found its own burrow, here it comes again, or it thinks there's a spider in there. That looks like a scorpion hole to me, though. Possibly looking in there for a scorpion or a spider. It would be definitely looking for a spider. Anyway, Susan, in New York, you wanted to know about whether or not female elephants will give birth after the age of 45. Yes, they will. Andrew is now following the spider-hunting wasp.
Maybe that was a bad idea.
And the answer is yes, they do give birth until the day they die, pretty much. Right. Well, that's probably not true. They probably have 5 years without giving birth. Let's go across to Jamie. She's with the hyenas.
That's true. Arrived in my personal happy place, which is the hyena den on Mvubu Road. And look who has popped out to explore its surroundings. One of the newest additions to our hyena clan. Oh, I'm getting involved. Awesome. Already tackling the older cousins. The cubs of the matriarch showing her spirit in terms of, oh, there's going to be squeals. This is where, with toddlers, there would be tears. Oh, ouch. And that cannot be all that pleasant. Got it by the ears, as instinct tells hyenas to do. And those sharp puppy teeth. Oh, managed to escape. Well done, little one. Well, you did pick that fight. You're going to have to learn to choose battles that you know you can win in life, and that definitely isn't one of them. And as far as I can tell, Madam isn't here. So the mother of the youngest cub isn't here. I'm fairly certain. I can't see for absolute sure, but that looks like Pretty to me. The young cubs... What did you just steal? You naughty little thing. Stolen away from one of the older cubs. Now, as our regular viewers know, hyena cubs inherit the status of their mother. And these new little brown cubs that haven't even got their spots yet, as far as we can tell, are the cubs of the highest ranking female. Oh, had it done. The cubs of the highest ranking female. They've inherited her status within the hyena clan, and therefore her attitude as well. And already a clear difference in the behavior between the one twin and the other. I'm fairly certain that's Pretty. It doesn't look scruffy enough to be Madam, the matriarch. Pretty being the mother of the oldest of the newer cubs. But there does appear to be another cub hiding there. I can see an ear suckling, so maybe I've got the identity wrong of that hyena. I don't think so, though. Might be that it's just November feeding that side. Hello. You back for more? You're very brave, because Mom's not around to hear your squeaks. Maybe she is. She might be. Just where we can't see her. And this, I think, is the most playful I've seen this brand new cub. There's 2 of them, of the same age. Are you going to climb a tree now, little one? The thing I love about hyena cubs is their front legs are so much more developed than their back legs. So every now and again there's a bit of a collapse. as their knees give in. They haven't quite got the same level of muscle strength. Sitting down for a brief rest, off to torment one of the December twins. And of course, all of this play for predators, whether they be leopard cubs, lion cubs, or hyena cubs, is essential in the building up of the coordination that they will need. Oh, there you go, you see what I mean? Bit of a speed wobble and a power slide there. Yes, you. Irresistible. I challenge anyone who watches our show who came with a preconception of hyenas being horrible, smelly, evil creatures to not be able to see the cubs as unbelievably cute. It's definitely November feeding there with Pretty, being distracted by one of the December twins, plus this new bundle of trouble. The ever-tolerant mothers of the hyena den enjoying their time here. Now, our little one dashed across to this patch of tree, and Diane wants to know what was hanging from that tree, and I can see what you mean. It does look very pink, that dangly bit. Diane, it's a piece of bark. The reason it is so red in color is that it comes from a knobthorn tree, which has high levels of tannins and a particularly pink cambium layer. Ooh, there's going to be... You know when you watch toddlers playing or little children playing and you wait for the moment where you know there's going to be tears? This is how this fight is going to go. There's going to be much squealing. This one holding its own though. Go. November with a clear size difference, already far bigger than his younger cousins. You've got a perfect example here of 3 sets of age groups born somewhere, or at least a first appearance around November, then December, and then late January. So essentially a month's difference between each of our different age sets that we've got here. Fascinating to observe how rapidly they grow. We get to sit with them every day, so we don't really realize. Hard to believe that just 3 or so, or 4 or so months ago, November was the same size as this little creature wandering around. Yes, I'm talking about you. Endless playfulness, and one very patient mom, who I believe is one of the most attractive adult hyenas that we have. Oh, you're getting so brave. Scrambling up the den site, you're going to fall down. I promise you, you are going to fall down. But as I said, the bold little cub is the cub of the matriarchs. And James Taylor's asked a very good question, which is basically continuing on with our question about the inherited status of the cubs. He's asked, are there different statuses per age group? And the answer is generally yes. Female cubs, older female cubs of the matriarch will have a more dominant status and a more dominant presence than the younger cubs of the matriarch, if that makes sense. So they inherit their mom's status. For example, this little one, I might have bitten off more than I can chew here in determining which adult or which sub-adult this is. But it would either be Bella, I don't think so though, I think it might be June, already so grown up. But it could be Bella, who is the oldest son of the matriarch, which would put him fairly high ranking, and would probably put him above if she has male cubs, but not if she has female cubs. So males always lower ranking than females. It's a bit of a tricky one, James, and the reason I say that, and I'm not sure which female this is, I think, let's see if I can see her right ear. Come on, girl, turn for me. I'm just staying in the position that I'm at just because there is, hello. Ah, there's the, is this the matriarch sitting up there? I was about to say I'm staying in this position, but I've changed my mind. Hyena dens keep you guessing. That looks like the matriarch to me, all of those nicks and cuts in the ears. That would explain where the other cub is, the other dark-coloured cub. It's probably feeding. James Taylor, just to finish off my answer to that question, people who've been studying hyenas for 30, 40, 50 odd years and observing the dynamics of their clans still don't have all of the answers, and it differs from place to place where studies have been conducted. So a study might bring back a comprehensive and conclusive report on the way in which hierarchy works in the eastern areas of Africa or the desert areas of Africa. That doesn't necessarily, it applies in exactly the same way to these little chaps. Oh. Making little squealing sounds. The typical squealing of a cub. Now this hyena den is the perfect place to come and watch interactions occurring between the different clan members. And Carla, who's watching in Holland, who's clearly been to Africa before, parked up at a hyena den for an hour once and counted up to 26 individual hyenas of all ages and wanted to know, hop skip, you better go back to mummy. There's the other cub, sitting with the matriarch, suckling. This other little one on a mission, though. Carla, you wanted to know if seeing 26 hyenas, was this an unusually large clan or a large sighting, or was it fairly normal? And the answer is it's fairly normal. It depends on where you were in Africa. If it was in the Kruger Park, so essentially the same ecosystem, the same area that we're in, it would be a fairly standard size for a hyena clan. I know the clan on Elephant Plains is exceptionally large. Its numbers about 30 odd hyena strong. Look how brave this hyena cub's being. That's awesome. It's definitely the most action I've seen, nibbling away on the sticks around the den site, exploring its new world with its powerful jaws. And there's Mom, giving us a happy upside-down smile, a matriarch's grin. Your babies are doing very well, Mommy. As we do have another vehicle in the sighting, so I'm going to need to reposition ever so slightly so that they can get a good view as well. I'm just going to wait until his engine goes off. I prefer to have one engine on at a time in a sighting such as this. How's it, Yuri? How are you? And while I reposition and make sure that the other vehicle can get a nice view, let's pop over and find out what James is up to.
We left Sydney's dam and we came down to quarantine clearings under the assumption that there would be great teeming herds of animals here. And slightly eerie silence, to be honest. Oh, there's a diker. Good grief, look at that. Andrew, our second diker today. There he goes. I love the little unicorn tuft of hair that the females have, and I'm sure it's an element of disguise in order to make predators think that they have a long, spiky thing on the top of their heads, when in actual fact it's just a little tuft of hair. She's the big one. They're substantially larger than the males. Bridget Bird, your one word for that beautiful sunset scene that we had at Sydney's Dam was envy. Well, Bridget, I'm sorry about that, but I suppose it's half a good thing and half a bad thing. But I can know exactly what you mean. It's what I used to feel when I lived in the city. Just twitching the flies off there. Andrew, don't you wish you could do that with your legs? Eh?
But Great.
rather than slapping them and then spraying DDT on them and basically choking out the atmosphere around the car. I wish you could do that as well.
Or if I had a tail, that would be nice.
A tail. Well, perhaps one day they'll invent a way to attach a tail to a human being's sacrum. She's a really nice specimen, that. So I was saying they are bigger than the males. That's nice. Clown Sharon, or peace and connection. I like that, connection. That's great. What a picture, hey? And little Gracie, aged 8, your word. If I can take, you've given 3, but I'm just going to use the 1. You said magical, and I think magical is a very, very good word for what the place that we live in here. It is truly magical. Okay, we're just going to ease our way around quarantine here. I don't think we're going to go anywhere else at a great speed. We don't have much time left. Light is a-fading. The moon is arisen. There's the moon, slightly more than the sliver it was last night. Stunning colours. Andrew, do you want me to stop?
No, it's okay, I got it.
Andrew's very skilled, you see. He's not afraid to shoot the moon out while we're moving. Interesting that there are no animals here, or no antelope, or impala, nyala. I'm just wondering if they haven't got wind of the doggies coming this way, but I don't think they have. We'll go past the fireside chat spot. Now, I love getting questions about the unusual animals here. And of course, when we talk about animals, often people think about mammals only. They don't think that birds and indeed insects are animals as well. And Dolly, you want to know about ladybirds. Do we get them here? We do get ladybirds here. We get various species of them. There we go. Get various species of ladybird here. Some of them are exotic, actually, and some of them sort of invasive, but many indigenous species of ladybird or ladybug. Beautiful, beautiful things. Not so many this season, of course, simply because we don't have a lot of water around, not a lot of flowers for them to eat, probably not a lot of aphids for them to eat, sorry. And the aphids, of course, are going to be a dearth of them because we don't have too much in the way of new green shoots and flowers. I'm going to go down to the Juma Dam pan quickly. Have a look there. I can smell the wafting of Tandagila's cooking floating out over quarantine clearings. I think we're having a barbecue of sorts this evening, or braai. That smells delicious. Now, this fellow here was here 2 nights ago, and Brian and I came past. In fact, that was last night. Hello? Have you moved? Not. Or just a comfortable spot? Yes, well, fair enough. It does look quite nice there. Chewing his cud, missing his horn. You can see it's getting dark now. We'll leave him. And ease gently down towards the pan. Oh, Kristen, you wondering if hippopotami, which we're probably about to see here in the Juma Dam pan, are dangerous. Are they dangerous? Kristen, no animal out here is dangerous unless it is provoked. Hippo are considered dangerous or potentially dangerous because they can be easily threatened. They can get very nervous if you get between them and the water. If they feel like they cannot get to the water that is their home, where they feel safe and unthreatened, then they can be dangerous. they certainly do cause a bit of damage to people around the continent because, you know, almost unwittingly, people get between them and the water. Now, you want to know what makes them dangerous? Well, some enormous canine teeth make them dangerous. I mean, some of them have got teeth like that. And I mean, they will do tremendous damage to you or to anybody if the hippo should have a bite at you. But in a vehicle, no, not so much. And they're absolutely fine in a car. They're not going to come and attack the vehicle. And certainly we'd be safe enough to either get out of the way or just stand our ground. There he is, speaking of him. And now a hippo like this, of course, is in what we call suboptimal habitat. He's not in very good habitat for him. He'd much rather be in a flowing river and clean water around other hippos, but because things are so marginal at the moment, things are so dry, these pans are all going to be occupied normally by hippo. I was surprised not to see one there in that second windmill pan that we were at on Arathusa. But I went past a pan today on Cheetah Plains, about the same size as this, and sure as nuts there were 2 hippo in there, trying to eke out a living in this drought. And tremendously peaceful. We can hear the last calls of the bird's day now. We can hear some francolins, a couple of blacksmith lapwings, the ubiquitous woodland kingfisher every so often, and a white-browed scrub robin calling his last for the day. And we were talking about ladybirds and ladybugs just now. And James Taylor, you want to know if we get stink bugs here. Yes, we get some very nasty stink bugs here. Some of the shield bug variety, which have a truly offensive smell to them. They're not that common, but what we do get is these little black stink bugs. And they come in swarms. We haven't had many of them this year, again, because there hasn't been much rain. But these swarms will suddenly emerge from somewhere, I don't know where, and they will get in everywhere. They'll get into your nose, into your ears, into your mouth, into your pajamas, all over your room, and then they will climb into your food. And they will do so in such a way that you do not notice that they have climbed into your food until you have taken a bite, and suddenly your mouth is filled with the foulest taste you can imagine. And that will be the end of your food. You will not want to touch food, possibly for another week. So yes, we do get stink bugs here, but thankfully those black ones have not come around this year. Okay, we've had we haven't had enough, but the light has faded and we're done with our little section of the drive. Thank you, Andrew, for your efforts today. Well done, good job. Thank you to all of you for your questions and comments and for playing along when I asked you to send through your words about how this magnificent place that we live in makes you feel. Thanks to Final Control. We'll hand you over to Jamie and Brian for the last little while. Thanks again for a great drive, and we'll see you in the morning. Bye-bye.
To a close on another stunning African day. I think the slight, even if it is slight, drop in temperature comes as a relief to all of us. I left the hyena den because it's got to the point now where unfortunately the days are getting shorter and the light just isn't holding out long enough for us to finish off our sunset safaris there. As our regular viewers know, we don't shine spotlights on the young cubs, that's our policy, and around the den site, just to not add that extra level of distraction and stimulation to their lives. Most of the nocturnal animals, once they are old enough, you can actually spotlight, you can put lights on them. But with youngsters, all of the guides are very, very careful about the level of interference that we have. They don't have quite the same level of experience that the adults do in terms of being on alert and dealing with any kind of potential threats. So we don't want to add to their distraction. But that was an awesome sighting with that little cub. I think that's the most active I've seen them since they first popped their noses out of that den site about a month ago. Exciting stuff and exciting times lie ahead. And we learn so much about hyenas. I feel as though I learn something about them every time I see them. And I think, given that I go on leave and tomorrow's my last drive before a couple of days break, I think I might even plan to start the sunrise safari there tomorrow morning. That, of course, is entirely dependent on how the day itself goes and what's going to happen. And as you know, we cannot plan ahead. Who knows who might come wandering in. Tingana could come up from the south, Karula could come in from the east, and all manner of lions could come wandering in from any direction. That's the joys of live safaris, and you'll just have to tune in to find out exactly what the day will have in store for all of us. And a big thank you to Brian for all of his fantastic camera work. Thank you, Brian, and for the pictures of the scorpions and all other magical contributions, as well as to Kirsty and Jerry, both for their final control directing, as well as for Jerry's fantastic contribution to my hairstyle this evening. Thank you, Jerry. It was a painstaking and very patient experience. I appreciate it. Thank you as well to Eugene for all of his technical work. And of course, as always, our biggest thank you goes to you guys, the viewers, for your contribution and your questions. We love having you on board. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch up with you for the sunrise safari. Cheers for now.